Okay. Okay. Oops, let's try this again. Okay, now here we are. Presumably everything is working. Hi, my name is Jeff Bushman, and welcome to the first episode of Be Healthy, Lose Weight. I am not a doctor. I am certainly not a dietitian, but I have successfully lost weight on a couple of different occasions, and we have pretty much discovered, and I am sharing with you, what it takes to not just lose weight, but to keep it off, and as importantly, to be healthy. Okay, I'm going to ask your forgiveness because I have notes in front of me, and I'm going to glance down from time to time to make sure we don't miss anything. Okay. Also, if you want to write to us, you can write to us at not TJBS Radio, but tjbradio@gmail.com. Feel free to do that if you have any questions that we don't answer. This, as I said, is the first episode and is part of tjbsradio.com, which has been a podcast network for many months now. And now we're doing YouTube Live as well. We have other programs on the that are just audio that are on tjbsradio.com, and you can also get them at Stitcher and wherever you get your podcasts, and several places you don't. That would be Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, a bunch of others, of course. And I also wanted to tell you that the programs we have on that podcast network include Speaking of Everything, which I host, a memoir in an episodic fashion about growing up in the 1960s in Los Angeles called Fairfax, and a program about romance fantasy novels. As you can tell, that's one of my major interests, but the two women who do that do an excellent job. So if you're interested in that, you can get that as well. And you can start out at tjbsradio.com and then subscribe from there. We'll tell you about some other things we're doing as the program progresses. But for now, let's talk about weight loss and, more importantly, weight loss maintenance. Okay? Anybody who's ever lost weight knows that losing weight is not really that terribly hard. What do I mean by that? What I mean is you can go on the Atkins, you can go on the Pritikin Ornish diets, both of which are much better ideas. You can go on the keto. Since I've been a kid, I've had a weight problem, so I know about a lot of diets, but not all. Besides the ones I mentioned, there's the water diet, the keto diet, the Beverly Hills diet. I'm sure I forgot something. Palm Beach diet, the Gertrude Schmerz diet. I mean, everything. Okay. And there's also the bacon diet. I remember that one. You can lose weight on all of them quite seriously. Oh yeah, there was an ice cream diet. You can lose weight on all of them. The problem is they're not healthy for you, except the Pritikin and the Ornish. They're not healthy for you, and they are therefore difficult to stay with, and therefore difficult to maintain your weight loss. What most people do is they go on one of these fad diets, and then they lose weight, and they say, okay, after this, I'm just going to use portion control, or they'll say, I'm just going to watch what I eat. Well, fascinating, but if you've ever had that experience, you know how well that works. So do I. Been there, done that. Okay. So what we're concentrating on is being healthy, eating healthily, and in the process, losing weight and maintaining the loss. Okay. So the diets that tend to be the least healthy are the ones I mentioned earlier, keto, Atkins, the water diet. Here's why they're unhealthy. And by the way, let me just tell you that throughout this thing, I'm going to be talking about a lot about what I've learned. And I understand that what I'm going to suggest is not something that a lot of you are going to do. Okay? Got it. But you should. Okay? Now, again, not because it'll help you lose weight, but because it'll help you be healthy. Okay. Well, first off, let me mention something at the get-go to take care of two of your concerns. One, to lose weight and be healthy, you don't need to do exercise. Okay. I do exercise. I'm a runner, but you don't have to do that. And, well, I'll get to that in a minute. The other thing is you don't have to be a vegetarian, okay, or a vegan. You can eat real food. I mean, I do eat real food, but you can eat food, you can eat some meat, but if you're going to lose weight, you have to understand and keep it off. You're going to have to understand what's involved. So we'll explain that. But we'll go through the process. And here's the problem most people have who say they want to lose weight. What they say is, I'd like to lose weight. I'd really like to lose 30 pounds or 50 pounds or 100 pounds. Okay. But then what they'll do is when you tell them how to do it, they will say something like, oh, I could never do that. My wife, who is also thin, had the experience recently in the hospital. One of the staff members asked her, how do you stay so thin? When she told them, the woman said, I could never do that. Okay, just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. You have heard it numerous times. It's such a cliche, I hate to repeat it, but keep doing, if the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing and expect different results. Okay. The reality is, if you want to be healthy and you want to have a good weight, you have to make some changes. Portion control doesn't work. Let's tackle that first. Portion control doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because when you try to reduce the amount you eat, a couple of different things happen. Again, assuming you're eating the same stuff, okay? Number one, after you eat the smaller portion, you're not satisfied. You don't want to be going around hungry all the time. And when you are hungry all the time, you will have a tendency to violate your own diet, the diet you're on that you think is going to help you, or the portion control. If you're still hungry, you're going to eat, and you're going to eat the stuff you shouldn't eat. And that obviously is going to work at cross purposes to what you're trying to do. That simply doesn't work. Again, you're right back on the same treadmill, if you will. Okay. Let me talk to you about the whole concept that people tend to have wrong, and then we'll go through some other stuff. What I'm holding up in my hand, or what I'm holding up, is two hands. This is to show a scale or weight, okay? All right, so I want to put my hands down, so you just imagine it now, okay? In one hand is a gram of fat. In the other hand is a gram of carbohydrate. If I had a third hand, it would have a gram of protein. Okay, what's a gram? A gram is a unit of measure that's used mostly outside the United States, and it's about 1/3 of an ounce. Okay, so if you take a gram of protein and you take a gram of carbohydrates, each of those is 4 calories. If you take a gram of fat, it's 9 calories. Again, what a gram is doesn't matter. Suffice it to say that a gram of fat, or a unit of fat, is about 2¼ times the number of calories as is a unit of carbohydrate or protein. Carbohydrates and proteins have the same number of calories. Fat has more than twice as much. Okay, what you have been hearing on a fairly constant basis for a number of years is you have to go on a low carb diet. Okay, I'm going to stand up for a minute. Okay, watch this. Okay, all right. I am not the thinnest person in the world. I will tell you that video tends to make you look shorter and squatter. I'm short enough without the help, but I am a little under 5'5" and I weigh 130 pounds. I've maintained that weight for a little over a year. Tell you a little of my story. I used to be very heavy, comparatively speaking. I used to be 192 pounds. I lost weight, got down to 135 a number of years ago, more or less maintained that for a long time. And then a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I let myself creep up into the 150s. It's because I wasn't paying attention. I was eating at night. We'll talk about that. But, and then COVID came along. It didn't hit me, thankfully. But when they said that obesity was a risk factor, I reasoned that if obesity is a risk factor to get COVID, and if you get it to have it be more serious, then overweight is a risk factor, though not as great. And although being in the 150s is not a major amount of extra weight, I figured it'd be better if I lost and got down back to 135. Well, I went a little farther than that, got down to 130, which is where I feel very comfortable. And I have maintained that for about a year. Okay. Again, I also exercise, but that's for overall health. It has nothing to do with weight loss. Let me tell you about exercise. I said I would, and here I am. Exercise has very little effect on your weight, period. Let me repeat it. Exercise has very little effect on your weight. Exercise is a wonderful thing. I love it. And you may love it or you may not, but it has very little effect on your weight because you'd have to really use a lot of exercise to burn off enough calories to have it make a significant difference. Now, I ran this morning. I run once a week. I ran 9 miles this morning. Okay. Don't be shocked, and no one is expecting you to do that. If you'd like to do it, fine. You build up to it. And there are certain people, by the way, who shouldn't run, no matter how thin you are. If you are a large person, tall, very broad across, please don't run. Don't take my example and use it. Don't run. I'm a little person. It's okay. I won't hurt my joints very much. You will. So if you're a relatively thin person or get thin because of what I'm telling you now, or in some other way, and you're also not very broad, then, have at it, see how it works for you. But don't start out with an excess amount of exercise. Again, different subject. Bottom line is exercise has very little effect on weight. The only thing it actually does that's positive in terms of good, well, it's good for health, but in terms of weight loss, is it puts you in the mindset. Okay, it says, well, I'm doing all this wonderful stuff for myself, exercising, running, bicycling, rowing, whatever it is, playing racquetball. Why would I want to go ahead and stuff my face with garbage? Okay, let's talk about what makes you feel as if you have satisfied your hunger for food. Okay, you'll recall I held up 2 hands earlier. If you eat a meal, the amount of food, to some extent the weight of the food, but the amount of food determines when you're no longer hungry. Okay, that may be obvious, but if I eat I don't know how much a typical meal weighs, but let's say it's a pound, okay? Excuse me. So if you eat a pound of food, it doesn't matter the nature of the food, you're going to be full when you eat that pound of food. So if you're going to reduce and maintain a lower weight, you need to eat that amount of food that is what nutritionists refer to as calorically sparse. The opposite is calorically dense. As we mentioned before, fat is 2.25 times as calorically dense as carbohydrates are. Now, I stood up for 2 reasons. First off, just to show you that I know a little about what I'm talking about, and also to let you know that I'm 130 pounds and 80% of my diet's carbohydrates. Now, when I tell you what I ate for breakfast this morning, that may strike you as weird, but I had spaghetti with marinara sauce and vegetables. Okay, weird for breakfast, but the point is it's a lot of carbs. Spaghetti is pasta, pasta is carbs. Okay, and it's not something I did that's unusual. I do eat pasta with some frequency, likewise potatoes and rice and vegetables. After this podcast/video is completed, I will be going to eat lunch. When I eat lunch, I'll have eggs, which is mostly protein. I will have rice, tomato, and potato, all carbs. This is what I do basically every day, and I'm thin, okay? So low carb is not the answer. Low fat is, okay? And also, I have a friend who has said to me when learning of my habits, my eating habits, and the fact that I run, he said to me, you know what? You're going to die anyway. And I want to talk about that for a minute because he's certainly right. I mean, I hope he's wrong, but realistically, he's right. We're all going to die. This is not about whether you live or die. You're going to die, okay? However, what eating healthily will do for you is it will allow you to not live out your last years as an invalid, someone who's using oxygen, someone who's finding it difficult to walk to the mailbox, can't breathe because of the excess weight, or because of the junk in your system? Okay. So basically, you can't do the same thing. You can't use the same old diets because it makes a difference. Now, the two diets that I've seen that operate on the carbs good, fat bad method are the Pritikin diet, which I've essentially been on since the 80s, I guess, and the Ornish diet. The Ornish diet is the diet that was similar to Pritikin, but put out by an MD, Jeffrey Ornish. And the basic difference between the Pritikin, well, there are two differences between the Pritikin and the Ornish. The Pritikin is high complex carbs, which reminds me I need to differentiate carbohydrates in a minute, and low fat. Ornish does the same thing, but Pritikin says you can have up to 20% of your calories from dietary fat. Ornish says 10%. So it's a little more severe. A lot of people have difficulty with it. Okay. Ornish also emphasizes more than Pritikin the fact that you want to have what are now being called a plant-based diet. That is, don't eat very much meat. Okay. The other thing I wanted to tell you about before we go back, and I'm going to tell you about I mentioned the complex carbohydrates. I'm sorry. You can tell I have great notes. I have to keep coming back to things. Okay. Simple carbohydrates are like sugar. You want to avoid that. Sugar is not good for you. I don't care who says what. I remember a father of an old friend of mine, long after I had cut out sugar, said, you got to have sugar to live. He was a diabetic. He didn't need sugar to live. But sugar not only doesn't give you energy, as we have been led to believe, but it actually has a rebound effect. What happens is you're tired, sluggish, I want some energy, you go have some sugar, and for a while it raises your energy. So let's assume, I'm using my hands again, let's assume that your energy level was down here, okay? You consume sugar and it comes up here. But what happens, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of diets get sabotaged, is what happens is after you consume the sugar and your energy is up here, sugar has a tendency to then be short-lived and your energy comes down to actually below where it was when you first consumed the sugar. Plus the fact sugar has been implicated in a lot of dread diseases, including heart disease and some cancers. So stay away from refined sugar, okay? I also don't think honey is all that great, nor maple syrup, which some people use as sweeteners. But if you have to use a sweetener, those are much preferable to sugar, okay? All right. But those are simple carbohydrates. Chocolate candy bars, any kind of candy bars, are composed of simple, refined carbohydrates. You don't want those. What kind of carbohydrates do you want? Vegetables, number one, fruit, and grain, okay? So any combination of those you want to do to keep the fat low is fine. If you absolutely need oil to cook something in, and you should use very little, use olive oil, okay? Or the vegetable sprays that go in the pan, those are good too, all right? But again, try not to use too much because it does add fat to your body that you don't need, okay? All right, one moment, please. In case it isn't obvious, these videos and audio recordings are not edited. By the way, I am speaking to you from the office I use for my business, which is unrelated to what we're talking about, but it has a relatively okay background if you ignore the microwave. Okay, so that's a simple carbohydrate versus complex carbohydrates. Again, complex carbohydrates, 4 calories per gram, in other words, 4 calories per about a third of an ounce, versus fat, which is 9 calories per gram, okay? I mentioned the thing about my wife being in the hospital. There's something else I wanted to mention to you about that. When she was there, hospitals are among those people who have things backwards. She's about 5'4". She weighs less than 100 pounds. She's really thin. And trust me, she doesn't need to lose weight, okay? She eats very healthily. But the hospital put her, like everybody else in the hospital, on a low-carb diet, Well, first off, low carb diets are not particularly good for long-term weight loss and weight loss maintenance. And secondly, that means that she was being given a relatively high amount of fat. Silly, silly. Okay, change that. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Completely unnecessary. Okay. The other hospitalization I wanted to tell you about was my father's. Um, he got to age 88 but died of heart disease complicated by dementia. Now, the only reason he made it that far, well, shouldn't say the only reason, I don't control all of life, but for a number of years after his second heart attack, he changed his diet, that by which, again, I don't use the word diet meaning to eat in such a way that you lose weight. I'm talking about the way you eat. And again, this is a forever thing, okay? He changed the way he ate after his second heart attack to essentially what I'm talking about, the low-fat, high-carb diet. His first heart attack was when he was 61. I went to visit him in the hospital, and while I was there, they brought him lunch. Different from the one they brought my wife more recently. This is, I don't know what that would be. He was in his 60s. Let's say he was 60 for sake of figure. So this had to be like 1980, okay? And they brought him lunch, and it consisted of a steak swimming in butter, mashed potatoes also swimming in butter, and a cup of coffee. Now, I don't like coffee much, but that was the only thing on there that wasn't horrible for someone who had just had a coronary, okay? Oh, maybe the caffeine, I don't know. I told the lady who brought the food to bring it back and bring a dish of brown rice and vegetables without butter and a baked potato with sliced tomatoes, and to please bring some mustard and ketchup in case he wanted to add those. Yeah, ketchup has sugar, but among the things that they were bringing him, that was the least offensive, okay? And you can, by the way, get ketchup without sugar. Anyway, at that time, most of the lay public, that is people like you and I scratch that, people like you and me, didn't really know all there was to know about diet and heart disease, but doctors did, or at least they had access to the information. And the dietary choice that the hospital made to give him food after his heart attack was really, really close to medical malpractice. Okay. One of the other things I've never understood is why they put McDonald's in hospitals, unless they're just doing it to get more business. Okay. The low carb diet is bad for keeping off the weight. One of the things that's bad about a low carb diet is it really does concentrate on protein. Well, what's wrong with protein? We need protein to build muscle. It is difficult in America, okay, and other well-developed countries like Western Europe. It's very difficult to avoid protein. You're going to get protein in a lot of things you eat. Beans and rice have all the amino acids one needs for protein to be created in the body, okay, with one exception, which is minor. But anyway, it's something called hem iron. But in terms of the vegetables, and I'm sorry, beans and rice, you'll get protein, okay? Unless you're a bodybuilder, the value of which I don't understand, but unless you're a bodybuilder, you don't need any extra protein. You're going to get plenty of protein. And most of you will continue to eat meat to some degree at least. The reason you need to be careful about meat is because it usually has a high fat content. That's true of beef, it's true of pork, it's true of lamb. If you want to eat meat, my suggestion is chicken and turkey, ideally with the skin off. I've frankly never enjoyed that, but if you want to do that, or you can buy skinless, boneless chicken breasts. You can eat turkey, which is a little fatter, but you can do that. But red meat is harmful for you for a lot of reasons, not having to do with weight, but having to do with health, which is our focus, okay? So if you're insisting on doing it, at least cut back your red meat. Now, I have to tell you, I was a major meat eater, okay? I used to have meat, by which I mean essentially beef, 2 meals a day and sometimes 3, okay? So I get the attraction of meat. I don't eat meat now, but that's another matter. You don't have to become a vegetarian to lose weight and be healthy. It helps, but it's pretty not necessary. Okay. But the reason specifically high protein, low fat diets high protein, low carb diets are harmful. First off, very difficult, as I mentioned before, to sustain after you've lost your weight. Okay. Secondly, and more importantly, again, the focus is on health. Okay. Kidney disease, I am looking for my drink. There it is, pardon me. Kidney disease is the third leading killer of women in this country. It's a little further down the list for men, but it's the third highest killer of women in the United States. Why women are more prone to that than men, I don't know. Okay. I do know that when it comes to high protein, it's a strain on the kidneys. Okay. And when you are, especially if you're a woman, when you're already consuming a lot of protein, when you've probably already had a lousy way of eating for a number of years, you don't want to put any additional strain on the kidneys. So if you're going to eat meat or a fair amount of protein in any fashion, please reduce it. You don't need as much as you think you do. Trust me. I've been on a high complex carbohydrate, low fat, and therefore usually low protein, except I do eat eggs almost every day, but only like 2. Okay. So that's all the protein I get outside of what I get naturally from the vegetables and grain. And I am telling you, I have never been at a loss for protein. I am reasonably strong for someone my size and weight, but also I feel great all the time, except right before going to bed at night. Then I'm really tired. But that's because I've put in a full day. Okay, you can do this. Okay. There, I don't know if everybody will know who she was, but Debbie Reynolds was an actress. And for those of you who are too young to know who she was the mother of Carrie Fisher and Jolie Fisher. No, I take it back. She was the mother of Carrie Fisher. And Debbie Reynolds wrote an autobiography. And one of the things that she said in her book was that the book would not be How to Be Like Wonderful Me. That is, it wasn't going to talk like a lot of celebrity books do about how wonderful the individual is and how perfect they are. And if you do this, you can be like them. Well, she said that book wasn't going to be like that, and it mostly wasn't. This is also not How to Be Like Wonderful Me. Okay. My flaws are multiple. But what I am telling you is what not just I, but other people have discovered. When Pritikin wrote his book, by the way, Nathan Pritikin was the name of the author. He called his diet the third world diet. Again, not really a diet, but the third world diet, because the way he suggested eating was the way they eat in a lot of third world countries. Now, the opposing argument to that is, in the third world, they don't live very long. And while that's less true than it used to be, it is still essentially true, but they don't die of heart attacks and they don't die of most cancers. And the reason they don't is because they don't eat like we do. They die of other things. They can get Ebola, they can get all kinds of viruses or bacteria that they can't cure easily in a lot of those countries. But they don't die of heart attacks and they don't die of a lot of the cancers that Americans and other industrially developed countries' citizens tend to die. Okay, so my family history is replete with heart disease, and in terms of the other than my brother, in terms of the men in my family before us, that is the earlier generations, I'm pretty much the oldest who hasn't had a heart attack. This is the point at which I clutch my chest and fall over, right? But that's the reality, and it's largely because I changed the way I eat a long time ago. Weight and food comprise a weird subject, okay? Of all the addictions that humans suffer, there are only 2 that are really difficult in this particular way, a peculiar way as well. You can totally stop drinking alcohol and you can totally stop smoking, okay? If you're addicted to gambling, you can stop that without any ill effects, except for the withdrawal. You might suffer from all of those, okay? There are 2 addictions that are different. You can change your eating habits and lose weight, but you can't stop eating for very long or you'll die, okay? There's another addiction we won't cover, and since there may be children who are listening, and we probably don't want to talk about the other addiction that you probably don't want to stop for very long, but you can't live, I suppose. It's just a question of whether it's worth it. Okay, back to food in a minute. I wanted to tell you about something in the form of a quick break here. If there's anyone you used to know, okay, that you'd like to get back in touch with, One of the ways you might want to do that, well, first off, if you've ever done an internet search for someone and found that what it boils down to is someone tries to suck you in to subscribe to a service, and then they'll say, we found whatever the person's name is, Irving Geschmiggy. We found Irving Geschmiggy in Michigan or whatever place it is. And if you just pay us X amount of dollars, we can find him for you. Okay. If you want to reestablish a connection with Irving Geschmiggy or anybody else, the website I'm going to urge you to go to is called findlostfriends.com. Findlostfriends.com. I'm not going to repeat an 800 number for you, okay? But at that site, yes, you will, if you decide you want to find Irving or Gertrude or somebody else who is in your life, friend, former boyfriend, former girlfriend, maybe a lost relative. Go to that site if you would. Yes, I run that after a fashion. Actually, one of my staff members really does a good part of it, but we run that and you will pay some money for it, but it's fairly inexpensive. And if we don't find the person you're looking for, you'll get a partial refund. So if it's something you're interested in, go see findlostfriends.com and see what you think. Okay. Now back to our program. One of the biggest problems in losing weight is what I told you before about not having it all set up correctly. And we'll talk about that some more in other episodes. But we started to talk about Ornish and Pritikin. And we talked about the lunacy of low carb diets. Okay, as I mentioned, about 80% of my food consumption is carbohydrates. And again, dietary fat is the problem. Let's see. Oh, let me talk to you about packaged food. If you decide to do this, and you should, okay, the thing you probably need to know is how do you buy processed foods? Okay, there are lots of people who are health advocates who say, don't ever buy processed foods, always make all your food fresh, cook at home, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine, but realistically, most people aren't going to do that, okay? Most of us buy at least some of our foods at a grocery store that are packaged, processed, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, you can talk about it not being pure, you can talk about it having junk in it. Yeah, all true, but realistically, that's how we're going to do it, okay? So here is what you need to know about that. When you are looking at a packaged food, the nutrition label is very instructive, okay? What you need to look at is where it talks about how many calories per serving and how many calories in that serving come from fat, okay? It's in there. You also have all kinds of things on there that we're not going to talk about now, but it's all there. So what do you want to do? Let's assume for the moment that a serving of the food that you're looking to buy has 100 calories, the whole serving of food. Now, sometimes they Mickey Mouse the size of the servings to make it look like it's fewer calories. It doesn't matter. What you're looking for here is a percentage. We're trying to keep the percentage of dietary fat in terms of calories to 20% or less. Okay, all right. So at 100 calories per serving, the total calories from fat needs to be 20 calories or less. Sometimes it doesn't do it like that. Sometimes it just tells you how many grams of fat are in the food. And you want total fat, not just saturated fat. So I'm going to tell you how to figure that out. Okay, it's math, but it's not tough math. Okay, all right. So what it is you want to look at the total number of calories. Let's again assume that the number of calories, let's make it a little harder, okay? Let's assume the number of calories per serving is 200, okay? 200 calories per serving. And the number of grams of fat is 5. I've already told you that each gram of fat is 9 calories, okay? So if we do 5 grams of fat times 9 grams, forgive me for not holding up 9 fingers, you're going to have 45 calories coming from fat. Again, 5 grams equals 45 calories. Okay, 45 calories. as compared to 200 calories per serving is 22.5%, right? If 45 to 200 is 22.5%. So it's a little over the amount that we're trying to stick to. Should you automatically reject that food? Frankly, I wouldn't. It's too small of a difference to bother with. But if it's back up at 30, now I think we have an issue. And how would you get 30% of 200? That would be 60 calories, which would mean it would be 7 grams, let's say. 7 grams would be 63 calories. So 63 calories, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. 63 calories compared to 200 calories per serving is technically 31.5, but it's a little over 30 calories of fat compared to 200. I'm sorry, 30%. 63 calories would be 31.5% out of the 200. Okay. Again, number of grams times 9. And then from that, there's actually a more complex formula, but most of this you can do in your head. Okay. If it's 7 grams of fat, 7 times 9 is 63. So if 63, depending on how many calories per serving, in order to get to a number of calories where your percent is low enough, with 63, I don't want to make it too complicated, but 63, you'd have to be up at what? 60 calories in order to be 20%. I think that would be 150. Yeah, 150 calories per serving. That's wrong. But anyway, as I said, it's not that hard. I just don't want to sit here with a pen and paper. But you don't really realistically need a pen and paper. If 63 calories, that would be about 300 calories per serving, because then you'd have down to 20% or 20 and a fraction. So you'd be okay. All right. Now, we're going to do another episode of this podcast. We may not do it within the next week, but we will try. However, there's something I'd like you to do. Pardon me, if you're still with us. And I realize many people won't, because they're going to say, this guy's crazy. He doesn't know that carbs are bad for you. Or you're thinking, I'm just going to use portion control or whatever. Here's the homework assignment. It's not hard, but many of you will not do it, and some of you will. And I hope you do, because this is going to be a really important thing for you. Again, there are people who talk about overweight but healthy, or fat but healthy. Believe me, that's a temporary situation. Yes, you can be fat and healthy, but you can't be fat and healthy long term. Anyone who tells you can doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay, I'm not saying that they have evil motives. I'm just saying they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, all right. So here's the homework assignment. I'd like you to have 2 things to start with. One, you need a scale. Okay, a scale is a biofeedback machine you can have in your house cheaply, usually under $10, somewhere around there. I use a non-digital because I'm always afraid that I know this is terribly old-fashioned, I'm sorry. I'm always afraid that can't remember what they call it, but that the thing which produces the digital numbers is going to break. Okay, it's electronic, it could happen. Okay, and then you have to replace a battery anyway. The old-fashioned scale with the numbers right there, that's fine for me. And I want to talk about when you weigh yourself. I don't care when you weigh yourself, but you have to weigh yourself at the same time every day, except for this homework assignment. You're only going to do it once a week. But when you start weighing yourself regularly, you need to weigh yourself at the same time every day, dressed the same way. So if you always get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and your household permits, you want to weigh yourself naked, fine, I don't care. As long as you do the same thing every time you weigh yourself, because you're talking about comparisons. You want to reduce your weight, but there's nothing saying you have to lose 20 pounds in a week. You won't do it, by the way, unless you're extremely overweight. The less you weigh, the less overweight you are, the slower the weight loss tends to be. And you will hit plateaus and all the rest you already know about. Okay. Need a scale. And again, they're cheaply available. Just get a new scale. All right. If you don't already have one, if you already have one, that's fine. Then, before you do anything else, don't start doing what I'm talking about yet. Tomorrow, because you've already eaten something today by the time you're watching this. Tomorrow, before you, this is my time. If you want to do it every day after breakfast or every night before you go to bed, fine. Although I think first thing in the morning is best, because you haven't eaten anything yet. It's going to be your lowest weight of the day. and it's therefore not discouraging. Okay? All right. Assuming you follow that and agree with it, you need a scale and a little notebook. It could be a little spiral notebook, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, or a legal pad, whatever you want to walk around with, but you need to keep it with you for the next week. Okay? Then tomorrow morning, weigh yourself. And weigh yourself in such a way it's going to be the way you always weigh yourself. Like I said, naked if you'd like, wearing pajamas, I don't care. The same thing every time you weigh yourself. Tomorrow morning, pardon me, I'd like you to weigh yourself, and you can mark it in the book or not mark it in the book. If you can remember it, that's fine. But then I want you to take whatever it is you're going to carry around with you for a week. I want you to write down everything every kind of food or liquid that you put in your mouth, okay? Including water, I don't care. I drink a lot of tea, but whatever it is you're drinking, eating, write it all down. I'm not going to look at it. No one's going to judge you but you. And don't worry about what you put in there. I'm not even asking you to change your diet to this regimen yet. If you want to, that's great. But whether you do or not, write it down, okay? Don't think you're going to remember it. Write it. Take the thing with you. Write it down, okay? I want you to be able to look at this later for comparison purposes, but there's also something else involved here that I'm not going to share with you yet. We'll share that next time. But for now, everything that goes in terms of food or liquid, water, tea, coffee, Coke, anything. If you're having a carrot, which if you're watching this is unlikely so far, but anyway, but it's a carrot or a hamburger. By the way, if you have a hamburger, write down if you're having the bun and what's on the hamburger besides the meat, lettuce, tomato. If you're having fries, fine, just write it all down, okay? All right. And then the next time we meet, hopefully it'll be after you have finished your week and before too much additional time has passed, okay? All right. That's it for now. Before we go, I want to tell you about one other thing. This is my last commercial message. Two things. One is I wanted to remind you to go to tjbsradio.com, listen to this is our first episode of the Be Healthy, Lose Weight recording, but there are other podcasts there and a variety of things that you might be interested in, okay? And then the second thing is I wanted to tell you about a book, okay? Many people know what process serving is. If you would like, you can look at Amazon.com and think about, or at least look at, in the book section. Don't just put it in the all section because you won't find it. But if you look in books and type in, "You've been served." You've been served. It's not about eating in a restaurant. It's the last thing I would mention during the course of what we're talking about. You've Been Served is a book I wrote, and it's about process serving. It's kind of amusing, and some people have said it's interesting. Okay, they're all my relatives. But other than that, you can find that there. It's called You've Been Served. If you put it in the all section, that is, if you type it in when you can look at everything, you're going to get a British TV series, which is not named the same, but is similar, before you ever get to the book. So look in books, You've Been Served. And while you're there, you can look at the other books we've got up there. But more importantly, and let me mention, the book that comes from what we're talking about now is almost done, and that will get up there as well. But in the meantime, join us next time. And again, the name of the show is Be Healthy, Lose Weight. Thanks very much. Be well. And most importantly, please, please, please be kind to each other. Good night.